go, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to City of Columbus Patriots Day 9/11 Remembrance. My name is Rick Isbell, as I said before, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies. Would you please, as you are standing, for Councilmember Priscilla Tyson as she gives the invocation.
Thank you. Will you all bow your heads, please? Good and gracious God, 12 years ago today, we called upon you when we were in despair. Today, we turn to you for your courage, your strength, your wisdom, and your love. God, continue to bring peace to those 2,976 souls whose lives were lost on September the 11th, and give them comfort to those hearts who still ache. The parents, the spouses, the siblings, and the children and friends who keep their loved ones' memories alive as a precious legacy. Dear God, continue to honor and protect the public servants who responded on September 11th and the days, the weeks, and the months that followed, and who continue to risk their lives for the safety of the common good of us. Lord, continue to strengthen the hands of those who defend our country and inspire our governmental leaders to the pursuers of peace. And in turn, God, we offer our prayers for our country and its government, our soldiers and citizens, and for all who faithfully serve our nation. Today, Lord Jesus, we ask your blessings on this program so that we may never forget. We may never forget. Lord, we give you honor and glory and praise. Amen.
Thank you, council members. Please remain standing as Downtown High School Air Force Junior ROTC posts the colors. It is my pleasure to ask Steve Ebersol of the 12th District American Legion to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join Mr. Udo Morosher of the Navy League as he sings our country's national anthem.
And please feel free to join in if you like. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Hey, that was really nice. Everybody was singing along. I could hear it. It's one of the best we had. Thank you for our youth who are here today. This is wonderful to see up in the balcony so many young faces sharing with us on this day. Now I would like for you to take a look here on either side at the screen. We have a special video that will help us remember the day.
It's very hot. I see any air anymore. Okay. All I see is smoke. Okay, dear. I'm so sorry. Hold on one. Stay calm with me. Stay calm. Listen. The call is in. I'm documenting. I'm going to let this... Hold on 1 second, please. I'm going to die, aren't I?
Very calm, very controlled. He said to me, I'm going to be okay. You know, there's a fire, but I'm going to be okay. And he said I said, stay down low. I mean, right? What we learned, stay down low if there's a fire. And he stayed down low, and he was hiding behind a desk, and he was trying to call for help, and he had no idea what was going on.
I just went out in the backyard and I sat in a plastic, those $5 plastic chairs under a tree, and with the phone in my lap, preparing myself for what I would need to face.
I was the last person from the outside world that she spoke to. I'll always remember that.
Along with Steven, my building got hit by a plane, and right now I think I'm okay, I'm safe now, but it's smoky. I just want to say how much I love you, and I will call you when I'm safe. Okay, Mom? Bye. You have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I don't know what to say. There's 3 guys. They've hijacked the plane. I'm trying to be calm. We're turned around, and I've heard that there's planes that's been flown into the World Trade Center. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
Thank you to Columbus TV for making this video with their talents. I would like to thank Mayor Coleman for helping us make this event possible. I would now like to make introductions. We have quite a few people have joined us today. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Governor for coming and joining us. Thank you, Governor, for joining us today, and you'll be saying a few words in just a few minutes. We have Sergeant Ron Rossler, who's a Medal of Honor recipient. Please, everybody, let's hold our applause till the end because there's a lot of people to read. Adam Rappian from Congressman Stiver's office. Walter Taylor from Congressman Teaberry's office. Greg Beswick and Veronica Brownlee from Congressman Joyce Beatty's office. Michael Dustman from Senator Portman's office. Michaela Hahn Lawson from Senator Brown's office. Cheryl Grossman, who is our representative for the House District 23. Tracy Maxwell Hurd, representative from Ohio House District 26. Dave Yost, Ohio Auditor of State. John O'Grady. Marilyn Brown, who are our commissioners. Terry Brown, Franklin County Recorder, is in the back there. Judge Terry Jameson, Judge Stephen McIntosh, Judge Kim Brown, Judge Colleen O'Donnell, Judge Guy Reese, Judge Dana Price, Judge Mark Hummer, Judge Robert Montgomery, Mayor John Gore from City of Marysville. We also have Eileen Paley, City Council, Michelle Mills from City Council, Herschel Craig from City Council. I would also like to talk about our directors. Mitchell Brown, Director of Department of Public Safety. Greg Davies, Director of Department of Public Utilities. Tracy Davies, Director of Public Service. Chet Christie, Director of Human Resources. We also have Alan McKnight, Director of Department of Recs and Parks. Napoleon Bells, Director of Community Relations. Dr. Teresa Long, Department of Health. Maria McGrew is a council member from Grove City. Marilyn Rush Elkelberry is a member of City Council at Canal Winchester. Bobby Mershon, also from Canal Winchester. Joe Abbott and Leah Turner are also council members from City of Canal Winchester. Rick Deeds, Canal Winchester. Mike Shattuck, City of Upper Arlington. Bill Hedrick, who is our Chief of Staff for Columbus City Attorney's Office, here in the back. And Stephanie Dodd, State Board of Education, 9th District. Also in the back, we have first responders. Would all of our first responders please stand? Joining us today, we have Chief Gregory Paxton from the Columbus Division of Fire, and we also have our Chief of Police here as well today. Chief Kimberly Jacobs, and we have Battalion Chief Jack Reel, who is the President IAFF, Battalion Chief Mike Vedra, Battalion Chief Patrick Ferguson, Battalion Chief William Bishop, Battalion Chief Michael Fowler, Deputy Chief Scott Strahan, Deputy Chief Timothy Becker, Assistant Chief Carrie Ellis, Assistant Chief Kent Searle, Assistant Chief David Whiting, Commander Richard Crosby, Commander Michael Gray, Commander Scott Hyland, Commander Rhonda Grizel, and Commander Jennifer Knight, and Deputy Chief Richard Bash. Thank you again for what you do for us and for protecting us. And now it is my pleasure to bring to the podium the Mayor of the City of Columbus, Mayor Michael B. Coleman.
Thank you, Rick. The governor and I moved over to those two chairs to watch that video. And as I watched that video, I could not help but get emotional. And to remember that time 12 years ago, 9/11, and the bravery and the heroes of those first responders who ran towards the buildings, and so many of them who perished trying to save so many other victims of terrorism on that day. You know, we should never forget that heroism, and we must always hold up as heroes our first responders. I believe in them. I've led them for a long time, and I love them, each and every one of them. You know, I remember that day because I remember sitting in my conference room with the business community, and we were all working together trying to figure out a plan to rebuild downtown. And one of my assistants came in and gave me a note and said, "Something's going on in New York. We need you now." So I left this room of some 50 business leaders and people who own companies downtown and went into my office and saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And I went back out into the conference room and I said, "You need to go to your businesses, to your companies, and ask your employees, tell your employees that now's the time to be with their families and to go home." And I looked out the window and I already saw our police and fire working in our downtown trying to evacuate people, not knowing if we were next. And in fact, at some point during that morning, a communication came from one of our deputy chiefs that they believed that a plane was approaching Ohio airspace. And it was the only plane that had not grounded in the nation. And so we immediately got into action, and that plane turned around in midair and went to Pennsylvania, where it crashed. I remember that day because that day changed the nation. That day changed me personally. That day made our country a better place, even in the face of tragedy. The city a better city, even in a time of stress and concern. And me a better person and a better mayor. Why is that? It's because we should not ever take for granted our freedoms. We should not ever take for granted our security. And we should never take for granted our first responders who are there each and every time for all of us. The next day, I remember going into the schools all over to this city, and children were crying, wondering if they were going to die too, because they saw the tragedy on TV at least 100 times during the day. They saw people jumping from the buildings. They saw people dying before their very eyes. It was a very tough day for our nation. But you know what? In times of crisis, that's when we come together. And that's where we come together in a way like we never have before. I don't want us to ever lose the spirit that we had of unity, that we had during that period of time after 9/11. We came together on the steps of City Hall. Many of you can remember, where elected officials, civic leaders, religious leaders stood there, white, black, Republican, Democrat. It didn't matter, because we were all Americans. Muslims, Jews, everybody stood there together. And we said, we stand here tonight because we love our country and we're going to take care of each other. We need to maintain that spirit in our city and maintain that spirit in our country. We will always have this event in Columbus because in Columbus we will never forget what has been given to us. So I want to thank Rick, being the great man that he is, and give you this proclamation on 9/11 for the 9/11 Remembrance Day. Thank you,
sir. Thank you, Mayor. Truly from the heart, and I really, really appreciate your words. I wanted to say a thank you again to our first responders here who, again, didn't flinch. But I also want to thank those young men and women who helped you come up here today. The downtown high school, the ROTC kids. And they came here today because they care, because they want to give back to the community, and they do a great job every year. It's tough to put on a uniform and go to high school, so I want to applaud them. Thank you very much for what you do, young men and women. As we all know, this is the 12th anniversary, and it has changed our world. And although the years have passed, the wounds are still fresh, and in our minds and our hearts. It's a day that seemed the world stopped turning. And now, it is my pleasure to ask for our governor of this great state of Ohio to come up and say a few words.
I've been with the mayor at two critically important events. The events to commemorate 9/11 and the event to celebrate the life of Governor John Gilligan. Both events, he spoke with great eloquence, as he just did today. Do you agree? With great eloquence. And I want to praise his leadership on trying to move our city forward. For the boys and girls that sit in this auditorium today, and the work he does to provide a future for the children who live in Columbus, Ohio. Yesterday, I was at Put-in-Bay to celebrate an event that many Americans don't remember and hardly studied. It was a great victory in Lake Erie that sent a message to the world about America's toughness and courage. And Oliver Hazard Perry, once and for all, made a statement about the independence and strength of the United States of America. And it was a message when he took his feeble fleet of naval ships that were hastily built in Erie, Pennsylvania, and defeated the British fleet in that great battle of Lake Erie. It was a destiny for our country. It was a destiny to experience for the rest of the world. Today we gather to mourn a great loss. Not the loss of our spirit, but the loss of so many great Americans who were caught in an effort to puncture and destroy the soul of the United States. I had the honor to be at Ground Zero not many days after the attack. I was there and watched the firemen and the first responders walk into the ruins at Ground Zero with microphones attached to long poles, hoping and praying that they would find life. The first responders didn't sleep. They barely ate. They were dedicated to finding those citizens who had been caught in something they never asked for, and to find their brothers and sisters, as the mayor said, who not just ran to the building, but ran up the stairs of those buildings carrying enormous amounts of equipment, only to receive a signal that the building was going to collapse. And it was in all of their best interests to be able to to leave so that more life could be saved. I looked at their faces, their haggard faces, and it was courage and discipline and love of God. Lining the fences that surrounded Ground Zero were pictures that had been drawn by students in the elementary school and hastily put on those fences. The message: find my mommy, find my daddy. I'm afraid at night because I don't know where my daddy is tonight. The first responders told me that they gained energy from those pictures of those children in that elementary school and gave them the strength to carry out their duties. In the buildings across the street, immediately across the street from Ground Zero, accumulated dust on the walls and on the windows. People had taken their fingers and had spelled out in the dust accumulated on those walls and windows, "God save my husband. God save my wife." Never seen anything like it. And yet, despite the attacks on our souls, we as a country have not flinched. You know, Mayor, I think, thinking of George Washington and the efforts he made against all odds to birth a new nation, to think about Oliver Hazard Perry up in the Battle of Lake Erie against all odds, to think about the work of Ron Rosser, one of 71 Medal of Honor Award winners. How many did you save, sir? Not enough. But I may have pulled about a dozen out. You know, we have a destiny. I believe it's driven by our Jewish and Christian ethic. And you know what that's about? We're not in this world for ourselves. We are in this world to serve others. That is why a fireman ran up the stairs of that trade center, because life suddenly was clear in his eyes that life was not about him, it was about someone else. It's why those people in that rickety rowboat rowed Oliver Hazard Perry from his sinking ship to another where he could raise the American flag and have victory through a hail of gunfire. It wasn't about him. It was about someone else. And when Ron, under heavy fire, rescued a dozen of his fellow soldiers in Korea, it wasn't about you, was it, Ron? It was about someone else. That's what I believe we have to take from this. And boy, do I agree with the mayor. We're a great country. We face many challenges. We're too divided. A house divided against itself will not stand, is what our great President Abraham Lincoln said. We have to unite. Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives, and we have to unite to build a stronger America. The Lord wants it, because the Lord wants us to carry out our destiny, to be a bright light and a shining example to the rest of the world about freedom and individual rights and the ability of people to realize their God-given purposes and destinies. So today we celebrate America. We mourn with those who lost, but we're stronger for it. because we've picked ourselves up and we've moved forward. And there is not a better place to communicate that than the very heart of America, right here under the great mayor and the great city of Columbus. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Governor. That was wonderful. I appreciate it. And it was kind of nice that you started talking about military, because we're actually segueing into the military part of this with our guest speaker. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have Colonel James Jones, who is the commander of the 121st Wing RTG, over here to my right. Colonel Stephen Foss, who is the Chief of Staff for DLA Land and Maritime. Commander John Sturba from the NOSC here in Columbus for our Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Tong Smith, who is the battalion commander for USAREC, which is huge. Thank you for coming today. And Major William T. Jacobs, who is the commander of Lima Company. We also have Jason Dominguez, who is the director for the Ohio Department of Veteran Services in the back there. Thank you, Jason, for coming here today. That being said, again, I want to thank you, Governor, for this wonderful remarks, and it's been a pleasure for having you be here. But now it is my great pleasure to have a guest speaker who has earned the respect of many. And he's not just a great leader. He's not just a man who leads by example, but he's also a good person. He's helped many a person out, taking time out of his own what little time he has to help others, to help his soldiers, to help people in the community. And I'm talking about Brigadier General John C. Harris, Jr., who is Assistant Adjutant General for the Army, Ohio National Guard, and he will give us a remembrance speech today. General?
Mayor Coleman is here, Governor Kasich is here, and I'm the keynote speaker. How does that happen? Governor Kasich, Mayor Coleman, Mr. Rosser, our elected officials, friends and family, it is truly my honor to be your keynote speaker here today as we commemorate the events of that fateful day in 2001. It's my hope, however, that as we review the horrors and the tragedies of that day, that we can also remember and celebrate the heroic feats of countless people that occurred on that day. You see, for a very brief sliver of time, our nation donned a pair of corrective lenses that helped us see through the haze of our differences and helped us focus on what was really important to this nation, helped us zoom in with a laser-like focus on what really mattered. At the time when we were the most uncertain about our nation's future, that's when we cared the most about our country, isn't it? They say that the events of September 11th changed the course of our nation. If that's in fact true, then it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to ensure that we truly learn the lessons of that day and that we make sure they're inculcated into the collective DNA of our country. One of those indelible lessons that was taught by me was actually taught by a survivor, a young man by the name of Specialist Bo Dobozinski. Bo was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Regiment. He was actually a tour guide in the Pentagon that day. He was located in a part of the Pentagon that wasn't even associated with the explosion. But when a Navy captain came into the corridor where Bo was working and said they needed medical assistance, Bo ran outside of the building and was immediately stopped by police. He was not allowed to go to the incident site. But it didn't deter him. Bo backtracked. He ran to the George Washington Parkway, and he ran on the highway all the way around to the north entrance of the building, where he immediately rendered aid to a woman who had difficulty breathing. After putting a breathing tube down her throat and helping her breathe, he helped her to transportation, and then he helped 20 other people get to the vehicles in the Pentagon parking lot to help them be evacuated. When he was done with that, he joined a group of 5 other people, and they went back and forth into the Pentagon all afternoon with water-doused rags over their faces to deal with the dust. See, Bo made the decision that day he was going to truly live the warrior ethos. He was going to place his mission first. He was never going to accept defeat. He was never going to quit, and he was never going to leave a fallen comrade. We talk pretty often about Todd Beamer. We know Todd Beamer pretty well. He's the one who made famous that coin, "Let's roll." But there were so many other heroes on board Flight 93 that day. Their feats may not have been as great as Todd Beamer's, but great just the same. One of those people was a lady by the name of Laura Grancola. Now, Laura, her sole purpose was to calm her husband, to call her husband, let her husband know he was going to be okay, in spite of the fact that she was facing her own demise. When she couldn't reach him, this is a message she left on his answering machine. She said, "Jack, pick up, sweetie. Can you hear me? Okay, I just want to tell you, there's a little problem with the plane. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I just want you to know that I love you." Another person on that plane was flight attendant Sandra Bradshaw. She called her husband at 9:50. That was just before the plane crashed. And she called him to tell him that she was in the process of preparing scalding water because if she got the chance, she was going to throw it on the hijackers. Passenger Jeremy Glick was further back in the plane. He called his wife on that day, and he said that the passengers on that flight had voted on whether or not to rush the hijackers and try to take over the plane. They took a vote on whether to rush the hijackers. Now, I imagine that was a pretty difficult vote. There were two courses of action. Either rush the hijackers at their own peril, or let the situation develop, let's wait it out, and see what happens at the nation's peril. And we're here today, in part, to celebrate that they made the right choice. Subsequent to that, we waged 2 wars. We've been at war for the last 12 years. The very first Medal of Honor recipient of the war in Iraq was a young man by the name of Ross McGinnis. From the age of 3 years old, Ross declared that he was going to serve in the military. When he turned 17, on his 17th birthday, Ross went down and joined the Army. 2 years later, Ross found himself a 50 cal gunner on a patrol in an unarmed Humvee in some of the worst territory in our country, in Iraq, in the world. In a place that was just infested with sectarian violence and insurgency. And while he was on patrol, an unknown insurgent threw a grenade from a rooftop and it fell down into the turret of the vehicle and lodged itself between the radio mount and the vehicle. Ross McGinnis, the battle drill he was trained to do as a gunner is to exit the vehicle through the turret. But he looked down and he saw that the rest of the crew couldn't see where the grenade was, therefore didn't know which way to exit the vehicle. So he did the only thing he could do, which was lower himself in the vehicle, lay his back on top of that grenade, and his entire body absorbed the concussion and all the lethal fragmentation, and the other 4 members of that crew walked out of that vehicle with only minor injuries. What made each of these events common? What made them so great? First of all, every one of them overcame some obstacles. I can't imagine what Specialist Dobozinski was thinking when he was turned away, but he refused to be deterred. When he got on the George Washington Parkway and ran, and that is no short distance, just to relieve his fellow man, to relieve suffering, he truly lived the warrior ethos that day. All these heroes ignored some of their own biases. What's not recorded from Flight 93 is any divisiveness or squabbling. There's no record that Todd Beamer stood at the front of that plane and said, he didn't stand at the front of the plane and say, I want management over here and labor over here. He didn't stand there and say, I want R's on this side and D's on this side. They cut to the quick and they got to what was best for our nation that day. And again, we celebrate the fact they made the right choices. I often wonder what Ross McGinnis was thinking when he laid his body on top of that grenade. I bet he didn't look inside the vehicle and take inventory. Let's see, we've got a Latino, a white guy, a black guy. I'll do this or not do this. No. In an instant, he did what was etched inside his character. He sacrificed himself for his fellow man without any account for his personal biases or his personal opinions. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating any specific political party or any religion or for any race. What I'm advocating for is that we look at life through the lens of September 11th. That we remember the personal courage and the honor of sacrifice that swept our country that day. when our concern for mankind was greater than our concern for ourselves. That was a day when parents picked up their children from school for no other reason than they just wanted to hold them. They weren't even sure why. And I can imagine that when they picked up their children from school on that day, the make and model, how fancy their car was just didn't matter. Suddenly, the square footage of our homes didn't matter so much to us. We saw the very best of each other in contrast to assuming the very worst on that day. We have so many examples here in recent history, we probably should go back and relook them through that lens. I can remember recently, in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, when we had a number of elected officials who were doing what elected officials do during crisis. They led. They were leading. And they appeared on national television, and they complimented the responses of each one of their agencies. And they calmed the public, and they restored order, and they spoke highly about how well the response was going. And I was a little dismayed the next day when I turned on the news, and they were criticized for being too complimentary of each other. Think for a moment with me about some of the recent debate about our Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance we just partook of today. Now, don't for a minute think that I'm saying that the debate about the words under God is trivial. It is not a trivial debate, but I contend that there is a more important debate that we need to have. Let's have dialogue about the words one nation. Let's have dialogue about the words indivisible. You youth on the balcony, what does "and justice for all" mean to you? Not justice for me, and justice for all. Because I submit to you, if we have discussion about that, and about mutual respect and accountability, and truly justice for all, it changes the debate about under God, because our children will respect those who choose to say it as much as they respect those who choose not to say it. You know, the crucible, September 11th truly created a crucible for this nation, that it cooked away the impurities and got us down to what was truly great. On that day when the sources of our national power were attacked, and they truly were, the sources of our economic power in the World Trade Centers, the source of our military power in the Pentagon, and had it not been for the heroic actions on Flight 93, the source of our political might would have been destroyed. On that day, we saw the best in our nation, what was noble, what was true, what was truly honorable and great. It's imperative that each one of us learn those lessons, inculcate those lessons in our soul and into who we are, and remember that we didn't perish on that day. We didn't become weakened, but we became stronger. Thank you. I'm Brigadier General John Harris. I will always place my mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, General. Fantastic. One of our best speeches we've had. Not today. You guys are great. Thank you, sir. And I want to compliment his parents who are here today. The General's parents rode up with me in the elevator, and I got to speak with them a little bit, and I got to tell them how much I thought of their son. He did a great job. Thank you. And now I would ask for you all to please give a moment of silence for those who passed on that fateful day. Thank you to Chief Vidra for the taps. And I also like to take the time to thank Martin Kessner from Columbus Police and Fire Pipes and Drums. That concludes our ceremony, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you all for coming today and giving us an hour of your time to remember those who gave a lot for our country, those who faced fear, and for those who are now still missing family members. God bless you. Safe returns.